Well, today we are carrying on with week 5 of Scientists and Inventors, and I'm going to get straight on to just say I'm hoping that your grown-ups have checked the information above, and I did mention this at the end of last week, but don't worry if this is the first time you're joining us, or you just don't want to do it, or you've forgotten, like absolutely don't worry. But today we are going to be doing an experiment, and I asked you to bring a selection of random stuff that you could find, making sure that it was roughly the same size, and to also bring a nail or something like that. So it was a nail, or I can't think what else I put. Maybe a sharp pencil, or maybe but just something like that. That's a bit blunt because it's about being safe. So if you have that, great. If you don't, absolutely don't worry, because I'm going to be showing you this. We're going to be kind of doing it together. That was it, a needle. Thank you very much, Tegan. I knew it was on the tip of my tongue and I couldn't remember. Absolutely, thank you for everyone wading in. It was a neaty. Good job that you lot are listening and paying attention, because it just I totally forgot what I was going to say, but something like a needle or pin. Thank you very, very much. If you don't want to do it, don't worry, or you've forgotten it, but that's just to remind you. So hopefully, barbecue skewer jack, that sounds awesome. Because today we are going to be looking at a new scientist and inventor. And so we're going to be doing this experiment because we're going to be looking, first of all, at materials for certain functions. So we're going to be thinking about what materials we use for specific things and why we use those materials for specific things. And the reason is because it has to do with this lady here, this on our slide, and this lady is called Stephanie Kwolek, and this is the lady we're going to be looking at today. And so we're going to start, before we even look at what she did, is we're going to be thinking about materials. So I have, first of all, some wood. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to think about what are the properties of wood. So when we look at different materials, what are the properties of those materials? So let's start with wood. What do you think you are going to describe their properties? So when I mean properties, I mean what they're like as a material. How would you describe them? So this, you can see, has been, the wood has been used to make what looks like some sort of big garden planter. So like some sort of plant pot. But what sort of material properties does wood have? So lots of people are saying it doesn't matter the type of wood, any sort of wood, but what property? So you could say it's hard. So it has a hard property, doesn't it? You can't put your fingers through wood. Okay. It can be carved. Brilliant. So it can be easily carved, and it can be easily cut, and it can be easily joined together with something like glue or nails. It's quite strong, isn't it? It's thick and it's strong. Depends on the type of wood. Some woods are stronger than others. So mahogany is really strong. Oak is really strong. Pine, which a lot of our furniture is often made for, is a bit less strong, but it's really, really strong. It's natural, absolutely. It's a natural material. We can grow it, so we don't have to artificially make it. However, some people are saying that maybe it's not too difficult to break, as in, if you really went at something that was made out of wood, you could break it fairly easily. Okay, so it's a tricky one, isn't it? But those are the properties. Right, let's think of our next one. Please excuse my dog if you can hear her. So the next one is ceramic or pottery. So like a mug. So when you've got ceramic or pottery, what is the property of ceramics, like mugs? What are they like? How would you describe the property of that? How would you describe? Can you hear her? My goodness, she's so naughty. I've been working all morning and she hasn't been naughty once, and now I'm live, she's naughty. That's how I can tell these things are live. Yes, absolutely. And they're not easily cut. They're moldable when they are in there before they're baked, absolutely. But then you have to bake pottery, don't you, or ceramics, so you can mold it, so it's easily moldable. But then when you bake it, it becomes really solid. But absolutely, it can shatter. It can shatter. So if I drop my mug on the floor, it's fragile, isn't it? It's quite a fragile material, but it's quite hard. If you look after it, it's hard. I couldn't sort of scratch at it, but it is quite hard. It does. It instantly shatters. It's instantly breakable. But it can hold hot liquid. It can be heated. Brilliant, really good properties. It's strong if it's looked after. It can hold things. Brittle. That's an amazing term. Brittle. It absolutely is brittle. But it's a really interesting one, isn't it, when you think about the materials? Right. The next one. Cement. I'm going to turn my camera off and go and shush my dog while you think. Can you tell me what are the materials of cement? So what's cement? So yeah, we use cement for building, don't we? So we use it for paths. We use it to join bricks together. We can actually make, yes, it's used to build houses. It's easy to make. It's used on roads. It's a hard building material, absolutely. So it's a bit like pottery or ceramics. When you use it to start with, it's quite soft, isn't it? And then it dries and it becomes really, really hard. So yeah, it's strong when it sets. It's also used to fill holes. Is it flexible though? Because what I find when I've built something, if you've got a new house, if you've ever moved into a brand new house, and the house settles a little bit, as everything sort of settles off, you often find that the cement has cracks in it. So it's not very flexible, is it? So once it's dried, it is strong, but it's not very flexible. So it's an interesting material. Right, let's go for the next one, rubber. So we often have rubber on tyres. So yeah, what do we think the material properties of rubber are? How would you describe rubber? How would we describe it? So we've said that actually none of the previous three are flexible. Okay, so none of the previous three are really at all flexible, are they? But what about rubber? It's durable, it's flexible, it's stretchy, it can be used for like tyres or some toys, it's bouncy, absolutely. It can create friction, which is why we often use it on roads, on our wheels, because it's grippy. It's pliable, love that word, pliable. It's squishy, it's stretchy, absolutely. So there's lots of some really good properties here. Right, next one and our last one is glass. So I often use a glass mug rather than a pottery mug. The reason is because the properties of a glass mug rather than a ceramic mug is it's far more easier to clean. So glass is quite easy to sterilize. So if you think about scientists in laboratories, they use glass test tubes because it's easy to sterilize. We use it for windows. So what is the property of glass? It's moldable, but absolutely it breaks easily. So it's very fragile, but you can hold lots of liquid, but it's transparent, which means you can see through it. So it's transparent, it can be strong, it's waterproof, absolutely, it's absolutely waterproof. But another one that's saying it's brittle, so it's brittle and easily breakable. So it's strong in its form, but if I dropped this, it would smash into lots of pieces. And yes, glass is melted sand, you're absolutely right. So it's really important when you're thinking about things. If we've got iron, iron is a really strong metal, but iron is really heavy. cotton we use all the time on our clothes and things, that's a lot more lighter, isn't it? So also we have to think about the weight of materials, because we wouldn't make a pair of trousers out of iron, would we? Because it's too heavy. So they all have lots of different properties. Now the next thing is why do we make certain things out of certain materials? So why do we make mugs out of pottery and not metal? Well, it's because you have to think carefully about its properties. Iron or any sort of metal is very heavy. Also, some metals, if you made a drink in a metal mug, it would actually, the metal taste would seep into the drink. Now, some metals are okay, like stainless steel. We have stainless steel water bottles. But actually, if you put a hot drink, sometimes I find, I don't know about you, but it makes the drink taste a little bit metally. It's really heavy. So we tend to make mugs out of pottery, unless, as I've said, we do sometimes make mugs with lids, we call them flasks, out of metal, and that's because we want a different property. We want the property of insulation. So sometimes we have metal, and then often they put glass inside as well, and that's to do with, and we definitely need some sort of rubber outside to hold on to, or a handle, because it can burn. But we tend to use that if we're wanting insulation. But definitely, yes, pottery is lighter, it's cheaper. So that's definitely a really a consideration. So whenever you're making something or designing something, you have to think about the best materials for the job. And so that is a job of lots of people. People think, scientists and inventors have to think all the time about the materials that they need to use for the job. So if we've got these particular materials here, these materials you would describe as being hard, wouldn't you? They're very hard materials. So wood is hard, iron is hard, cement is hard, steel is hard. And so we tend to use hard materials for specific things. So some of you have said house building. So things that are that we want to last, building materials, absolutely. And they're good because they're strong and they last and they're hard wearing, but also they're very heavy. So that's the downside to that, isn't it? They're very heavy. So there's lots of downsides to these materials. Some of them are very heavy, some of them are very expensive. And also, like we're saying, some of them aren't at all flexible. Wood is a teensy bit flexible, but they're not really very flexible. But these are what we tend to use for large structures and large machines. So if you want something like a big skyscraper, you're not going to build it out of rubber. You're going to build it out of steel and cement and things like that. But yes, steel, you're absolutely right, is very expensive. Now we're going to look at Stephanie Kwolek, and the reason is because this is she is an inventor, and she her job in life was looking at specific materials, because she had this point and this idea: why is everything that's really strong, why is it always so heavy? And why are things that are weak, why are they the light things? And can you have something that's really strong but really light? Because what she noticed as an inventor is that everything that we use that is strong is heavy. And so she was tasked with the job of finding a material that was really hard and really strong, but that was really light. So lots of people are saying that's confusing. Okay, well, that's the point. If you think of everything we use right now that's really strong and really hard to break, it's always heavy. Iron, cement, brick, steel, it's really heavy. And so she had this thing of, can we make something? Can we use something that's hard, that's strong, but is also light. Okay. Now, she was born in 1923 in America, and so that, if we're thinking chronologically, that is just after World War I. Now, her father was interested in science, and like we've seen with a lot of inventors, they tend to, what your parents are often interested in, often passes on to the children. So her dad was really interested in science, and so this meant that Stephanie was also interested in science. And so she left university at 23 and she had a degree in chemistry. And so when she had this degree in chemistry, she's obviously been really good at chemical compounds and making things and making materials. And so she got this job at a big chemical company in New York. And so this company in New York said, you know what? Car tyres are actually quite hard wearing, but they're really heavy. And they make the overall car really heavy. And we want our cars to be lighter, because if our cars are lighter, they'll go faster. And so the other issue is that when our cars and our trucks are really heavy, they also burn more fuel. They need far more fuel. And so she was tasked with, if you can find a lighter material to use on car tyres, and to use on tyres, so car tyres, truck tyres, if we could find a new material, if we could make a new material, it would make our vehicles lighter, they would go faster, and they would need less fuel. Okay. So lots of people saying that sounds impossible because strong things have to be dense, giving it more weight. And that's absolutely the point that she was at. She was like, well, how are we going to do this? Because all our strong things are dense and really heavy. So it is hard. So what would you try and develop if you had been tasked with the same problem? Can you think of what you would do? What would you make if you could make something? What material would it be made out of, or what material would it be based on? Because we're looking at all these particular materials, but if you were going to try and design an alternative tyre that wasn't made out of rubber, what sorts of things could you use? And so that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at a selection of materials, and this is what we're going to be thinking about. Okay, now if you have this sheet, then we can use it, but you don't have to. You can do this after the session, or you can do it along with me. But what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at different sorts of materials, and we're going to be working out. So I'm going to see if I can take that there. See if I can stop my camera. See if I can move these cameras. That's it. So you can see our materials. Now, the first thing to say is that I need you to make sure that if you're going to take part in this practical with me, that you do have parental supervision, because things like pins or nails are sharp, and so you need to make sure that I am not with you. So I say this all the time, I am not with you. So you need to make sure that you have a parent there that's responsible, because I cannot take, and Twinkl cannot take, any responsibility for you guys taking part. So you need to be super careful. But what we are going to do is we're going to take each of our materials. So we're going to start with, this is some cloth. If you do my sewing sessions, you might recognise it, because this is a piece of cloth that I use to practice some of my stitches on. Now you're going to need some scales. And what we're going to do is we're going to weigh it. So this is quite a good one, isn't it? Looks quite a good material. So let's weigh it. And it actually doesn't even register. It only registers at being just about 1 gram. So you're going to, first of all, you're going to weigh it. 1 to 2 grams is what my scales say. And then what you're going to do, now make sure that you have, this is our crafting cover. So make sure you have something underneath you, a plate or something like that, so that you don't damage any tables. Okay, and then you're going to get this and you're going to drag it across the material, and you're going to work out what you can notice. Now, the first thing that I notice is this is really, really light. Yeah, you can absolutely just watch me do it. But it snags really easy. Can you see? I just drew it across just a little bit, and I have got a humongous hole in it already. Can you see? It's got this big hole already. And I only just drew it across really, really lightly. So I have my table, and I've written on it cotton cloth, and then I've put that it's hard to rip. So I can't really rip it. It is quite hard to rip. It's very flexible, but it's not, and it's very light, but it's not very hard wearing. So that's another one. That's one. Now the next thing I have is I have the inside of a toilet roll. So I'm going to weigh that. Make sure I've got my scales on. Oh, hang on. Got my scales on 0. Now the inside of my toilet roll is 5 grams. Okay. And so then I'm going to take my nail and I'm going to draw my nail across that. Well, it might be soft. It might be a bit quite light rather. Okay. But look, I've cut it. So it's light and it's fairly flexible, but it's even worse than my cloth because look, I've completely broken it. Let me know what you guys are doing. So that's no good. I wonder if I can just put these in. So you can add these in because you're going. So you can add in what you're going to write and so on. Okay, I don't think I can do it actually. No, I can't. Now the next one I have is I have some plastic. You see this bit of plastic? Now this is quite flexible. Let me weigh it. So it's 2 grams. So it's similar. Okay, it's plastic. So it's a bit of a plastic packaging from my woofy dogs, their treat bag. Now, this is an interesting one. So I'm drawing my nail across it. Oh, no, actually, look, I have got a hole. It was quite good though. There were bits of it that were quite strong. But again, quite flexible, quite light, but it's got a big hole in it. Right, the next thing I've got is a metal lid, metal jam jar lid. I'm just going to weigh that. So that's 7. Now let's draw a nail across this one. Now, look, it's not done anything. No, so it's not broken it at all. Little bit scratchy, but not broken at all. But the downside to this one is it's not flexible at all. If I was going to use that as a material, I'd really struggle because I can't actually bend it, can I? Or do anything with it. Right, the next one I have is a piece of tile. Okay, this is a piece of tile. Now, this is 40 grams. So this is so much heavier than anything else I've used. So it's really heavy. But let's have a look at this one. Now again, look, my nail hasn't done anything to it. It still looks perfect. It's still as thick as it was. It has scratched it a teensy bit, but actually I've just tried to polish. Look, I've polished it out with my finger and it's gone again. Okay, so there's no, it's not scratched it at all. I'm quite impressed with that actually. It's not scratched it at all. It's not affected its makeup whatsoever, but it's really heavy. It does feel heavy. It's 50 grams. So whereas this is 2 grams, this is 50 grams. So this is the thing. This has gone, I've gone straight through it with a nail, gone straight through it with a nail, gone straight through it with a nail. So everything I've got that's soft and flexible, I've gone straight through. This, that's really hard, is really inflexible and really heavy. This is fairly heavy compared to my other materials. Again, did really, really well. but again, heavy and inflexible. Right, the next ones I've got is some foil. I think I know the answer to this, so let's weigh it. That's 1 gram. What do you think is going to happen with my nail? Okay, well that's rubbish, isn't it? So that, again, it's okay for what we use it for, which is to cover things, but actually, again, it's really rubbish. In fact, that's the worst performing one of all. And then the last thing I've got is a paper case. So paper, let me weigh that one. That doesn't even register, so that's less than 1 gram. If I use my nail, lots of you say it's going to tear it. Absolutely it does. So then if we're thinking about the hardness of the materials, this isn't hard at all, is it? I've ripped it without trying. It's light, it's flexible, but I'd give it 1 out of 5. Good for a muffin, absolutely, not much else. This, 1 gram, really flexible, but again, not hard at all. Not hard at all. I hardly tried. This, really flexible, really light, but not hard at all, is it? Because I've put a big hole in it. Same went for my toilet roll. Same went for my plastic packaging. And then the thing that performed the best, the thing that's really hard, is heavy and it's not flexible. So my question to you guys is, did you find anything that was hard and light? Did anybody find anything? So strongest was wood. Okay, yeah, so that's a really good one. Can you make a tyre though out of wood? What do we think? Could we make a tyre out of wood? I don't think it would be very good, would it? Because it's not very flexible. What else? Has anybody got anything? So somebody's bent a spoon. So a spoon, again, not very flexible. No, nobody's got anything. It's hard, isn't it? And this is what Stephanie Kwolek did. So no one's got anything. So we've all failed. We all can't find anything. I'm still very impressed at this. Oh, someone's used a rubber band. So I'll be interested to know what that was like. So yeah, that's what we use for tyres, isn't it? Rubber. Felt. Oh, how did felt do? I bet that kind of potentially ripped a little bit as well. Now, this is where we have Stephanie Kwolek. So what she did was she invented a very, very hard plastic. In fact, this plastic wasn't like the plastic I have on my packaging. This plastic was 5 times stronger than steel of the same weight. So if I had some steel and I had this plastic that she invented, the plastic was 5 times stronger, but it was much, much lighter. And so this lady was created this amazing invention. So she created this plastic, she invented this plastic. It was so hard that it was 5 times stronger than steel, but it was much, much lighter. Do you not think that that's incredible? Now, it was used in cars because obviously she worked for a car manufacturer. We know that plastic is man-made and the issues around that, because obviously it doesn't break down, does it? But this invention that she made, she used in cars because that's what she was making it for. But why she is significant is because she soon found that her invention was being used for another very special job. And that job is linked to this picture here. This material, because it was so strong and so light, it could even stop bullets. And so this material that she had invented and made for the car industry is actually what we use today for bulletproof vests. So you couldn't put a bulletproof vest on. The police couldn't put a bulletproof vest on if it was made of steel. Now this material was so amazing that it's what we now use for bulletproof vests, because the police can put on a bulletproof vest and it can be really, really light because it's made of this very special plastic that she invented. But it's so strong, it's light, but it's so strong it can even stop bullets. And that's absolutely correct. Whoever's behind Mandy's name, the invention was Kevlar. And so we use Kevlar in all sorts of bulletproof clothing. So the armed forces, all of their bulletproof clothing, the police force, all of it is made using Kevlar. And so we need to think, which is what Jack said, the enormous number of lives that this lady has saved. But also we use Kevlar for lots of other things. We use it for protective gloves. So we use it in boots and helmets and fireproof clothing. So if you've ever seen those really flexible gloves that you can use to handle really hot things, it's because they contain Kevlar. So we also use Kevlar in fireproof clothing, in boots, in helmets. We use it in diving equipment as well because it's really, really light but really, really strong. And so this is a famous quote from her. I don't think there's anything like saving someone in life to bring you satisfaction and happiness. So that is kind of what she is famous for. Now, we didn't do a very good job, did we? Because we couldn't find anything that would work, but that is what she's famous for. So what we're going to do is we are going to have a quiz about how much we remember about her invention. So the first question is, can anybody remember where and when she was born? Can anybody remember? I did say roughly how you could remember it because it was just after World War I. Can we remember where and when she was born? Well, she was born in America, in Pennsylvania, but if you've got America, in 1923. So America in 1923. So what or who inspired her to study science? Who was it that inspired her to study science? Who inspired her? Do you remember? Absolutely, lots of people have got it. It was her dad, although sadly her dad actually passed away when she was only 10, which is a bit of a sad part of her story. But yeah, her dad was that influential. It was the reason why she developed her passion for science. So can anyone remember this material that she was trying to make for what? What product was she trying to make better with this material that she was trying to invent? So what product was she trying to make better? Can we remember? Interestingly, we don't use Kevlar in these things, or I already told you the answer there. But it is car tires. But yeah, we still use rubber in car tires. So it's a funny thing that we can think about an invention but then never actually use it for the purpose that it was invented for. Now, how much do you remember about her invention? Why was she trying to make these cars lighter? What was the reason? Can you remember? Why did they want cars to be lighter? There are some reasons. You give me at least one. What was the reason behind it? Can you remember? So the cars could go faster, absolutely. So they use less fuel, absolutely. And they weren't as heavy, but yeah. So if they were faster, they would be cheaper to run. They would be lighter. They'd lose less fuel. So if you've got any of those ones, you're absolutely So what did she end up inventing? Can you remember its name? What was it called? Because you may want to go and have another look and research this in a little bit more detail. Can anyone remember what the name was of this special plastic? Anybody remember what it's called? It's called, lots of you are getting it. It's called Kevlar. So if you want, at the end of this session, you can go and find out some more about Kevlar and what it's used for, and a bit more about how she invented it. How strong is Kevlar compared to steel? Can anyone remember? I gave you a figure of how much stronger it is compared to steel. Can we remember the answer? How much stronger was it? Can we remember? It was, lots of you getting it, absolutely. It was 5 times stronger than steel of the same weight. Okay, absolutely. Just fantastic. Now, can we remember any uses for Kevlar? What did it get used for? It didn't get used for car tyres, but what do we use Kevlar for? We use Kevlar for lots and lots of things. Can anybody remember what they are? What do we use it for? Bulletproof vests, absolutely. Really the big one. Yes, that's lots of you have got it. But bulletproof vests is a big one. Protective gloves, absolutely. So lots of people. Some people say motorbike gear. Yes, so if you get expensive motorbike protective gear, then that can sometimes have Kevlar in it. Helmets, boots, diving equipment. Sometimes, this is why I said go and have a look. Sometimes you can get very expensive bike tyres with it. Sometimes you can get very expensive car tyres and fireproof clothing. But we don't tend to use it really, but go and have a little look. We don't use it as much. So can you think, as we sort of finish up, of any other things you reckon it would be a good use for? Because this is what I'm going to leave you with. I want you to think about what other uses could Kevlar have, and therefore think about how significant do you think Stephanie Kwolek was? So on that scale, we've been doing this at the end of every session. How significant, from incredibly significant to not particularly significant. How significant do you think Stephanie Kwolek was? And a reason why. You need to always give at least one reason, but preferably 3 reasons for your opinions. The second thing to think about, and I know some of you don't like comparing people, but it's a really good skill, is was she more or less significant than Mary Leakey? So Mary Leakey was who we looked at last week. She was the one that found all that really important evidence for the evolution of humans. Was she more significant than Mary Leakey, or do you think she was less? What do you think is more significant? Somebody that invents the material for bulletproof vests, or somebody that kind of has helped prove human evolution? Really interesting, because Mary Leakey kind of has, like some people are saying, that Mary Leakey didn't invent anything that saved lives, but Stephanie Kwolek did. So most of you are saying more significant. But yeah, have a little discussion at home about it and go and find out some more about Kevlar. Because some of you were saying, I wonder if you could get Kevlar tyres for my wheelchair. I wonder if I could get them for my car. I wonder what I could get that's made out of Kevlar. So absolutely, go and have a look at other things that are made of Kevlar. Have a little chat about how significant she was and whether you think she was more or less significant than Mary Leakey. I will see you next week for the last session in this 6-week block, where we are going to be looking at Leonardo da Vinci, who is possibly one of the greatest inventors and idealists of time. So we'll see whether you agree or not. I will see you next week. By the way, with Leonardo da Vinci, could you please, before the session, could you please measure yourself from the top of your head to the bottom of your toes? Could you bring that measurement with you, and could you also bring a tape measure if you want to take part in next week's more practical task? So if you're joining me next week, can you come with a measurement of your height, or the measurement of somebody in your family's height if you don't want to do it yourself, and can you bring a tape measure too? Okay, and I'll see you next week. See you soon.